This work was created as a response to the themes of Windrush and COVID. It looks at people who've come across between the late 40s and late 70s as part of the Windrush generation, looking at a number of people who've also worked with the NHS from various minority backgrounds, and particularly those who have worked during the first wave of COVID and have died as a result of looking after people who suffered from the COVID.
Because everybody, when they make a film, they'll make a film about Caribbean men and possibly, you know, some steel drums and everything. And I felt it was really important that we looked at the the daughters and the granddaughters and because most of the generation now, the Windrush generation, have passed away. And that's why I made the film. I turned it on its head. And that's what I do with most of the films that I make. Because there's always what you call a backstory. And that was the backstory behind the Windrush generation here in Liverpool. And I think it's, you know, it's up to people to find out more, not that it's just London and Tilbury or Brixton, but to find out more about the generation here in Liverpool. We started off by just having workshops and people getting to know each other, bringing their photographs in, and then just listening to each other's stories. And then they decided what stories that they wanted to tell.
Is there anything that we can do to kind of keep these stories alive? Obviously, like, the documentary is a great way to do it. But is there anything as a community or people that we can do to continue to keep these stories alive?
You can do it through workshops. I know there's a group, the Goddess Group. You know, they get together. There's books you can read. So there's things that you can do, to continue the stories, and anybody can do it. I mean, there's lots of information in the libraries. There's, you know, we've got a lovely archive down in the city, and it's just full of everything. Because we think like, oh, where's the Caribbean community? How do we get involved with them? Oh, we only see them on certain days or when we have Black History Month. There's a big community here, and there's people can get involved in it. And that's what it's there for. It's looking at identity. So, and the message is about that we all live in an inclusive society. This is what the film is actually saying. If you looked at Steve McQueen, when he did a whole series, but he did one particular film on education and the failure of the education system towards young black kids at that time in the 50s, because they had this segregation in London, didn't they, of the buses, because they felt that the schools were being overwhelmed. People can go back to it again and again and look at all because of the different politics around it. Yes, it is a wide story, and the failure of education for many children, not just black children, but white children as well, within the system. And I think it's only now that we're only starting to look at it and starting to address it. So there's that story to tell from those young people and how they were, you know what I mean, locked out of the education system through no fault of their own. For tonight's screening here at FACT, I have to thank the Big Help Project, who really got themselves involved in the Windrush Week. So there's just not only my event going on, but there's other events going on right throughout the week linked to the Windrush.
My name's Andrew Lynch. I'm going to give you a perspective, which is the perspective of a local black person. My perspective has grown out of being part of a community. You get to the Second World War, and for the second time, the shout goes up in the Caribbean from the mother country, from England, we need you to help defend the empire. First World War, same thing happened. Second World War, there was a response both times. Volunteers came to Britain, signed up, and went to fight. So So they came to a community, a black community, that had been here, as I say, since early 17th century. Sorry, early 18th century. And I think they must have been shocked. They must have been shocked. One, that we even existed, because they wouldn't have been told about us. Another, that we are lots of different colours, different shades. Another, that we are not just Caribbean, but African, of African descent. Another, that we were so not like people with light skin over in the Caribbean, privileged. We were exactly the opposite. It didn't seem to matter what shade you were, as long as you were identifiably have colour in you, as they used to say, right? Identifiably of African descent in some way. You might as well be as black as you could be, possibly be. It doesn't matter. It doesn't give you privilege here, because they called us half-breeds. They called us, or every name of mongrel under the sun. They called us half-caste. And they looked down on us because of that. There was theories around racial purity and the dangers of mixing. And the dangers of mixing was represented by us, because you could see it on our faces who we were. They would naturally expect somebody, a community with light skin and dark skin, and to be stratified the way it is back in the Caribbean. That generation, became in the country what it means to be black. To be black is to be part of the Windrush generation. That needed then to be challenged and needs now to be challenged. If we feel that, and we tell ourselves that the Windrush generation is what black people are, who we are, we do the Windrush generation a massive disservice. And we do our long-standing 300-year-old black population. Well, we do them an insult. It's an insult. It's a lie. I was talking to a local historian, Ray Costello, and I said to him, do you know what? We're perpetual newcomers. Doesn't matter how long we've been here, how many generations. Every time new people come, that's who we are. It makes me wonder, are we, in 50 years' time, say, going to be celebrating all the good things that current refugees and asylum seekers have done over the next coming 50 years? And are they going to be us? Are we going to be just have been here 50 years in 50 years' time? Or is this truly embracing black people? I don't think it truly is. I'll be honest with you. I welcome the celebrations. But because the celebrations are so focused on the Windrush generation and not focusing on that generation as being part of a process that's been going on for hundreds of years, that lie doesn't bode well. I stand before you with green eyes, light skin, telling you I'm black. And when I told you about the Africans, they have got much darker skin than me. But 400, 500 years ago, they weren't black. They weren't even Africans. They were different nations. Blackness didn't mean anything to them. They became black through being told they're black and watching interactions and money making based on, and got involved in it themselves, as I say, based on the colour of people's skin. Identities were forged out of that. Identities which seem to be fixed, seem to be directly based on the colour of your skin. One of the things that the Windrush generation has had to engage with, and Liverpool's black communities help them to do that, is the fact that your identity is not dictated by the colour of your skin. We're not just naturally black, naturally white, naturally mixed. That's a choice. Some people don't think it's a choice, but it was being invented. It becomes really clear when you live in Liverpool 8 or Liverpool 1, and you see people, lots of different colours, all saying that they're black. It seems ridiculous when you see people much whiter than me, much lighter than me. In fact, most people would think that they're white, and they'll say to you, no, I'm black. It's because of their family history and their life experience. And it's a political for them. And is for me. It's a political choice. I know it seems incongruous. I don't care. I'd rather see him incongruous and challenge racism than go along with what seems obvious and not challenge racism. So it might seem obvious to some people, you're mixed race, you're half caste, you. That does not challenge racism. Challenging racism is actually challenging every aspect of it, and particularly the fundamental mistakes and reasoning that it's based on. In terms of the raw deal, if you like, that the Windrush generation got, right? That is part of the raw deal that working class white people, working class people get. For any of the Windrush generation, and it happens to us Black British for generations, it's a particular slap in the face when you are treated as a foreigner. There's nothing wrong with being a foreigner. Every time I go on holiday, I'm a foreigner. When I come back, I'm not. When I'm at home, I don't want to be treated as a foreigner. The Windrush generation are having their turn to be treated as perpetual newcomers. So I'm black. You must make a decision as to what you are. My black is political. That's what it is. It's political. Acknowledging how I'm perceived. Not going, okay, plausibly mixed race. Plausible to who? Do you know my history? Was I mixed race when someone was trying to smash my face in and calling me the N-word? No. Did they punch me hard? It was hard. You know what I mean? No. So I think that the Windrush generation, to a large extent, have taken control of how they have been perceived and changed that, but only to a large extent, and that can be rolled back surprisingly quickly when things start going wrong. So all it takes is economic disaster, demagogues telling you should blame that person, you should blame that group, getting people at each other's throats. That's all it takes. And there's a ready-made ideology and mythology of racism that is just, you can take off the shelf and go, there you go, people, have a bit of that, go and get them. People didn't think I was an oddity. They thought they knew me. They thought I was a nigger, and they wanted to bash my face in. And these people I'm talking about are working class boys like me. Spoke like me, educated like me, exactly the same. Exactly the same. But for some reason, they thought that there was a benefit in trying to kick my head in. There was no benefit in that economically at all. Even if they killed all the black people in Liverpool at that time, there was only a few thousand of us. We weren't causing a problem. You know, we weren't economically dominant or any of that kind of stuff. So why did that continue? Why is that happening? When you had at that time, 60s and 70s, people, adults, who knew very well, and we're saying the issue is economics. The issue is class. It's actually racism, as we all know. Anyone who's looked at diversity in any depth at all, racism is a drag economically. It's a big drag because it wastes our resources. Like, so for instance, I think it's valid for me to go, you know what, I'm black, and that guy there, or that woman there, who's really, really dark-skinned, me and her, or me and him, we are the same. And we are the same because we've got the same interest around this, and that's ending racism. We get it, we are subject to it, and we stand together and use identity as a weapon. I'm pessimistic about the education system because of the national curriculum, and it's already been politicized. I'm black, politically, so guess what? When I talk about these kind of things, and I talk about education, I've got a political agenda, know that, right? But it's not a party political agenda. Anybody can be anti-racist, right? Well, why is it taken as being party political to actually have an anti-racist curriculum? Why is it controversial in any way to tell the whole truth rather than half of the truth? Are we mature enough now to look at both sides of it? You've got to be realistic about things, you know, and that takes a level of maturity to be really realistic about your shortcomings and some of the bad things you do as an individual. And it's just as hard for a culture or for the city to be able to do that. But you need to do it. It's the truth. As long as we refrain from challenging whiteness, not white people, yeah, not you, right, but the idea of whiteness, and refrain from unpicking that and seeing what that's about, and maybe where it needs to be reformed, right? And the same about blackness and all of the different racial responses and identities that we take up. Unless we start to have some real honest conversations around these things, which we all shy away from, then we're going to be stuck here for the indefinite. Why is identity? Why does it need to be cut up? Why does it need to be mixed? Why does it need to be cut up? Why can't I be this, 100% this, and 100% that, and 100% the other? Britain has got and Liverpool, it's got a very checkered past, to say the least. I do own the shame of that. I benefit from that as well. I live in a very sophisticated society. There are opportunities open to me. I disagree with what the people did back then so strongly. And if I had a choice, even if it meant I don't personally exist, I would say, do not go around the world buying people and doing horrible things to them. And do not go around taking other people's countries and enslaving them. Do not do that. That's the wrong thing to do. But nevertheless, I know that I am formed in large part by this culture, this country that has benefited, and I don't share in all the benefits by any means, and our community do not share in all the benefits by any means, but we do share in some. And so therefore, to the extent we do, I feel really guilty like you about being British, but I can't deny it. That's it, thank you. Cheers.
To do with the theme of today, which is Windrush, of which my parents were part of that generation, I was really thinking about the fact that when something monumental happens, people don't forget to ask you how you are. It got me thinking about the Windrush. Lots of people were brought to England with the promise that this would be the land of milk and honey, and that life would be better than where they came from. So they left their familiar and they got on a boat and they travelled for months. Some people travelled for months. And they arrived in an environment that was so different from their own. So not only was there a massive culture shock, but they were not met with the promise that had been given to them. They were met with, in fact, the opposite, which was they were met with hostility and met with disdain and were told that they weren't welcome. And the enormity of that must have been devastating. I do think it's important that as human beings that we check in with each other, always, if we can. And I do think that the importance of creativity is that it generally tends to make us feel better. Creativity is far more powerful than just the outcome, because it's one of the few things in life where we're given permission to express our feelings. And I think it's really important that we do, and that we acknowledge the importance of expressing those feelings. So it doesn't always have to be negative. It can be, actually, I feel amazing. One of the things I've learnt that really helps us as human beings is the importance of breath. Obviously, the importance of breath for singers is that it means that we can sing longer phrases with more control. It means that we are more in sync with each other when we know where and how to breathe. But on a human level, it's great as well, because it not only helps us to focus better, but it helps us to feel calmer. It helps us to feel clearer. And it makes everything feel easier. If we feel a bit anxious, we feel a bit nervous, if we concentrate on our breath and we slow it down, we feel better and more reassured. Breathe in through right, 2, 3, 4, hold for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, and hiss. 2, 3, 4, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Let it go. And then let your body do what it naturally wants to do. So if it wants to slow down naturally, let it do what it wants, but keep your breathing open till we come back to stillness. Big grin. Big, big grin. Again, big, big stretch. Like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 4, 5. 1, 2, 4, 5. 1, 2. Na 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 na. Go. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Well, the first ship arrived in 48 from Jamaica. And that whole Windrush generation was from 48 to 71, I think it was. My dad arrived in 58 and then worked for 2 years so he could send for my mum in 60. And when we were born into one room, me and my brother. And it was because that classic story, okay, this is the side that isn't great, but it's a classic aspect of the story, is that when black people arrived in Britain, and also people arrived and it was based on Enoch Powell's River of Blood speech, which was just, you know. West Indian islands were generally quite poor. There were very few opportunities for work or for advancement. And so people saw it as a way out. Lots of people migrated to England, to the States, to Canada, were the 3 main popular locations. And so those stories that people told about when they arrived and they were looking for somewhere to live, in windows, in houses, it often said, no dogs, no Irish, no blacks, in that order. And so, you know, when I started this morning and I was saying that trauma and that, well, how are you, question that never gets asked, meant that a lot of people just kind of arrived and just had to get on with it. They were away from home, away from their familiar. And I'm always really thankful for the fact that the reason they came over was so that we could have a better life. And we certainly did. And so that's why I don't really like to dwell on, what I like to dwell on is the resilience of people. And resilience is really important. And they've definitely given me resilience, but what they've also given me is a positive view of life. Because, again, it would be easy, wouldn't it? It would be easy and understandable to to think that if you're met with hatred, that you then become hateful. And my mum and dad always said to me, no, 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 no. That's the very thing that you don't become. So for me then, my mission through my creativity was always to try and create situations where people were brought together and celebrated the togetherness and looked for our similarities rather than our differences. Because that's the way the world goes round. Whenever there's divide, whenever there's chaos in the world, it's because somebody somewhere has decided that we need to focus on why we shouldn't get on. And that's when the trouble starts. But when we look at our similarities, I think it just works in a much better way, which is why I wrote this song. So Love Sings is all about what's great about life, in my opinion. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're celebrating love. We're celebrating peace. We're celebrating all of life and all that we believe in. We're celebrating trust and glorifying joy and singing out our praises for the hopes that we live for. So again, you're adding a brightness to the sound. You're trying to fill the room with the sound. You've got that internal pulse and smile going on and ribcage expansion. A lot to think about. So 1, 2, 3. All voices lifted up, harmonies ring out. Go. Harmonies ring out. Next bit goes. Rhythms taking over. So, should we have a go at the whole thing? All voices lifted up, harmonies ring out. Rhythms taking over when love sings.
I haven't sung for a long, long time through illness, but so I was terrified of coming. I want to just keep singing, and I feel truly blessed for this workshop. It's been like a masterclass. I've just got a lot from it, and very grateful. And it's opened up my world again because singing's back in it from today.
I love the workshop, the breathing techniques. Jennifer is an amazing professional and an excellent teacher. I love the song Love Sings.
So I've had an amazing time today at the Florrie. Jennifer delivering a really informative and really fun workshop. It's not the kind of thing that I would usually do, mainly because I don't view myself much as a singer, but she really brought it out of everyone, inspired people with a lot of confidence, and she had me singing notes I didn't think I was able to, so I had a really great time, learned a lot about Windrush and Jennifer's own family history, personal and interpersonal accounts of that, and it's just been an excellent week. From Monday at Fact with Bea Freeman to Friday with Andrew and his talk about Windrush and Black Settlement, to today, it's been nice and varied, and it's offered lots of different perspectives on Windrush from a variety of different angles. So it's been a pleasure and a privilege to be amongst the community with so many talented people in it, and I'll definitely come back to a Jennifer workshop.